Every day, our lives collide with thousands of things. Some seem rather simple, others we take for granted. But the trappings of modern life and the materials they're made from have transformed the way we live, giving us comfort, pleasure, and power. Behind them is a story of hidden transformations, proof that we live in an age of miracles. This is nothing less than levitation, where the weak and fragile can become the super strong, where parts of the human body can be built by machine. I mean, that feels like science fiction. These are the innovations that have transformed our world. I mean, it's just so audacious. I can't believe they actually did it. The materials that have allowed us to create a world we enjoy. It's already feeling comfy. The visionaries who made it happen turned new materials into miracles of mass production. Look, baby seals! That define the modern world. Look at that. Wow, wow, wow. I'll be recreating their genius in the lab and investigating the properties of the remarkable things they created. The everyday miracles that have transformed our homes, our world, and ourselves. I'm going to start by looking how inventors and designers have transformed our homes. How their genius has elevated the mundane to the miraculous. You're probably watching this on your television, sitting on a comfy sofa, or on a computer sitting in bed. Either way, your home is full of carpet and furniture and all the accoutrements of modern life. What that means is that you've collected a vast array of metals, ceramics, glasses, liquid crystals, LEDs, and a huge panoply of plastics. And that collection is very impressive indeed. All the more impressive when you consider that just a few generations ago, almost none of that stuff existed. To get a real sense of that, I've travelled back in time to visit a house in Britain at the turn of the 20th century. This is the living room from a house around 1900. 2 adults, 6 or 7 children would have inhabited this space. And I mean inhabited, I mean this was their living room, their kitchen, their bathroom. They had a bedroom upstairs where they all slept, but the rest of the time they were here, and it's incredibly small and incredibly Spartan. The house looks so different because of what's in it, and what's not in it. Nearly everything has been painstakingly made by artisans and craftsmen from the same wood, metals and fabrics that have been available for hundreds of years. And in comparison to our modern lives, the number and variety of possessions is tiny. They speak of a life, for most people, of hard graft, with little comfort or colour. We've come a long way since 1900. Our homes have been transformed. And for me, that transformation hasn't come about because of benign government or advanced philosophical thinking, but because of our mastery of stuff. Our homes are now bright, high-tech pleasure palaces. Gone is the drab austerity. And the reason they're such a pleasure to spend our lives in is due to our first everyday miracle. It's a material straight out of the lab, and since it was discovered by mistake in Germany in the early decades of the 20th century, it's touched every area of our lives and caressed every part of our bodies. In the 1930s, the Germans were preeminent in the world in chemicals and plastics, and this guy called Otto Baer, he invented a new one. He mixed 2 chemicals, polyol and isocyanate. That should do it. Now, mix them together. There's a reaction between these 2 liquids, and they form a solid plastic. And he invented polyurethane. So in a matter of minutes, that's turned into a hard plastic. Quite a beautiful one. Even at the time, it was semi-interesting, a new plastic. But occasionally, there was some sort of mistake in the formulation and something quite different came out, something marvellous. And I'm going to try and recreate that. I'm going to put the polyol in, but not as much as before, because you'll see in a minute why. And about 36 grams of the diisocyanate. Okay, so far so good. What Bear didn't know is that his chemicals were sometimes contaminated with water, so I'm going to add a little bit of water to this. So at first it's the same, then after a while you realise that there's some fizzing going on. By introducing water to the chemicals in the reaction, carbon dioxide gas is produced. A bit like in a fizzy drink, this produces bubbles. But because the polyurethane solidifies, the fizz is permanent. What Bear had inadvertently created was what we would eventually call foam rubber. As a result of this accident, we've got two different materials. They're chemically almost identical, but one is a hard solid, and the other one's a light, foamy material with completely different material properties. Having cast the two materials into a piece of tubing, I can show you what a difference the simple addition of water makes using a standard material science test. Okay, it's called the tomato test. As you'd expect, the hard resin makes light work of the tomato. But when I do the same thing with a second batten, the result is very different. By changing the chemical reaction, the plastic has become soft and light, and the tomato easily resists my attack. Perhaps the oddest thing about Bear's discovery was that for a good 10 years, nobody had any idea what to do with this squidgy new material. But today, like it or not, all our lives are inextricably linked to foam rubber, and hardly any of it is used to attack fruit. If you're sitting down watching this programme, you're sitting on foam. Almost certainly. Because foam is responsible for all the comfy stuff in your home, whether it's your sofa, your chair, even your bed. Comfortable sofas and chairs no longer depend on expensive and labour-intensive horsehair, feathers, flock and springs. Nowadays, comfort can be delivered with this one single material. And the real beauty of foam is that it is easily mass-produced, so we can all enjoy the comfort it provides. This factory alone produces a fresh, individually moulded piece of foam every 30 seconds. So you can mould a whole piece of furniture in one go with this process. That's the backbone of the chair. It's a steel frame that goes into the mould, and then the mould will be closed over, and then the polyurethane mixture will go in, and that will foam around the whole frame and create an integrated piece of furniture that's both stiff and comfortable. The mould's heated from the outside so that the skin cures faster than the interior, so you get a nice smooth out surface. Another piece of furniture is gestating in the womb of this mould. It will soon become a fully formed, comfy seat for humankind. Beautiful. It's already feeling comfy. It's nice and warm, actually. No chair is complete without the seat, of course. And there we are. Simple as that. The versatility of foam doesn't stop there. Changing the initial mixture affects the eventual density and squidginess. So foam can be used to create a dazzling array of padded products. So not only can you make comfy seats out of this stuff, but you can do all manner of things. Have a look at this. Squidgy, plasticky foam can withstand temperatures of up to 200 degrees, used in engines to absorb sound. Or this, I mean, this is an armrest, and yet it feels very hard. It feels like that can't possibly be a foam, but it is. How about this? This is a tray for an airplane meal. You've had these a million times. There's the cup holder. The whole thing's a piece of foam. There's no end to it. Here's a headrest for a fighter pilot's seat. And here's the nice bit. This is hard in the middle, but soft on the outside. So you can change its properties all around the seat cover, and yet super light for a plane. And if you're not satisfied with that, you can have foam that squidges and remembers where you've squidged it. It's called memory foam. And all of this due to a mistake by Otto Bayer. And to think, at the time, they had no idea what to do with the stuff. And the answer was, well, pretty much everything.
You can probably find foam, sometimes in several different incarnations, in every room of your home. But there are many more everyday miracles when you start to look. Even, maybe especially, where you don't expect to find them. One of the greatest examples of this is something I first encountered in rather a painful way when I was just 15 years old. I was on my way home from school, a tube journey I made every day.
As I was waiting for my train, a guy in an anorak came right close up to me and said, "Give me your wallet."
I didn't really know what to say. I had 23 pence on me and I wasn't inclined to give it up. It had already been allocated to future purchases.
"I've got a knife," he said, and I looked down to his pocket and there was definitely something pointy in there, but I thought, it's probably a pen or his finger. It definitely wasn't a knife.
It was then that my tube arrived and I devised my brilliant escape plan. I would simply run past him before the doors closed. But as I did, he stabbed me. He cut through 5 layers of clothing and 2 layers of skin, leaving me with a 13-centimetre gash on my back. As it turned out, I was right. He didn't have a knife. He'd used a razor blade. And that revelation that something so small could do so much damage shocked me more than the idea that my life had been threatened.
What a piece of material that is. What a sliver of metal. Springy, elastic, and yet strong and hard and ultra sharp. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't enjoying being stabbed and having blood gushing down my back. But the whole experience did make me realise just quite how important materials are and how that they are at the heart of civilization, that our ability to turn rock into stuff like this is who we are.
The razor blade is our next everyday miracle. It was born in the United States in 1901, a nation clearly in desperate need of a shave. It was the brainchild of one man, a man who gloried in the name of King Camp Gillette. That actually was his real name. Gillette had identified a problem. He realised that shaving was a complicated and time-consuming business. Cutthroat razors were expensive and needed sharpening every time you used them. And that's where Gillette saw his opportunity. He would make a cheap, disposable blade from as little steel as possible. His challenge was to make it hard enough to hold an ultra-sharp edge needed for shaving.
It's got a thin bit of steel here, and if I wanted to turn it into a razor blade so I could shave my face with it, well, I've got a bit of a problem because it's a bit bendy, it's not particularly strong, and it's certainly not very sharp. So how can I transform that into something that is all of those things? Strong, hard, and sharp. And I can do that using something called a heat treatment. I want to show you what I mean. So, turn on this blowtorch. Going to heat it up to red hot. And now I'm going to quench it. Now let's see what we've done to this piece of steel. Oh yeah, brittle. But that brittleness is because the steel has become incredibly hard, and that's the hardness you need to make a sharp edge. Gillette's next challenge was that hardening and tempering steel so that it can be sharpened was traditionally done in forges by blacksmiths. Gillette's tiny slivers of metal couldn't be produced that way. So he invented a brand new manufacturing process. Each individual blade starts life on a roll of medium carbon steel. They're first stamped into shape, then fed through 3 ovens and freezers to reach just the right hardness. Still on the roll, the blades are sharpened 3 times before being separated, packaged and boxed. Not only could men now shave at home in relative safety, the blades contained so little metal they were cheap and, crucially, disposable. And because he threw blades away, the customer would have to keep coming back. It was a brilliant business model. Gillette was ultimately selling time, and time is money. He boasted that his razors could save the US economy $450 million a year. This sliver of metal is a minor miracle. It's changed the way we live our lives. And that's the challenge to all materials. They have to meet a human desire or need to become part of our everyday lives. Otherwise, their impact will always be limited. Plywood is another everyday miracle, an extraordinary material story. Plywood is the culmination of one of our longest relationships with a material, wood. And its emergence has revolutionised design within the home. Traditionally, furniture was made from solid wood, and making it was the preserve of craftsmen. Ornate and intricate pieces were skillfully carved and assembled. But the properties of wood mean that the design and shape of objects made with it are limited. Plywood transforms ordinary wood into something utterly different. In an almost ludicrously simple process, it removes the limitations of wood completely. To see how plywood revolutionised the possibilities for furniture designers, I've come to Hackney in East London, home to one of the UK's oldest plywood furniture manufacturers, where original 1930s designs are still made from cut wood veneers. So is this basically just a big plank of wood that's been cut up? How do you make that?
Effectively, it's a tree that has been sliced against a knife, and in this particular case it's 1.5 millimeters. There's no loss of material, and it's all put back together in the same order, and this constitutes a whole tree. We're sticking it back together in the order in which it was sliced from the tree and producing laminated sections. In this particular case we have 1.5 mil birch veneer, and in a normal solid timber of this thickness you would not be able to bend that. Right. But because they're individually glued, put together in a stack, they will bend. And they'll even rotate.
Yeah, something
so
very
you can
beautiful
give
about
a twist in that. And it's all reliant on the glue. Once the glue sets, it's a rigid glue, so it holds it in that way.
So I can see that if you don't get the glue right, then this whole thing will just unspring itself. Because you're holding a tension, you're holding it in.
If you use a rubbery glue that does not set glass hard, this will eventually just come out and be an embarrassing collection of loose parts of veneer.
The glue is the key to creating plywood. Making curved furniture would be impossible without it. Each individual layer of veneer is coated with glue before being placed one on top of another. The whole stack is then put into a mould where it's bent into shape and left to set. The glue sets so hard that once the veneers are removed, they're locked into shape. And all that's left to do is to cut and finish the final piece. The furniture that plywood made possible was curved and contorted. When it was introduced in the 1930s, the use of wood in this way was considered controversial, and its appearance shocking. Since then, plywood furniture has redefined the boundaries of what is possible with wood, and it's become a common feature of modern homes. Plywood is not just useful because it's flexible and mouldable, it has another very useful property. Now, take a look at just a normal plank of wood like this. If I put it between these two tables and get a 4 kilogram weight and drop it, it doesn't withstand that impact. And why is that? Well, because a plank of wood has a grain. So the grain was aligned along this direction of this gap, and so when the weight hit it, it split along the grain. So wood is strong in one direction and weak in another. Now plywood is little bits of ply. Each one has a grain, and each one is actually very weak indeed. But if you crisscross the grains and glue them together like this, then actually what you build up is a piece of wood that's strong in all directions. Using 7 of these thin sheets, I've made my own piece of plywood. Each sheet has been glued together, alternating the grain direction each time, before being put into these clamps and left to set. The result is a piece of plywood that is the same thickness as my original piece of solid wood. Okay, so this is the ply. It's just crisscross, glued together. Now we'll do the same test on that. No problem at all. The glue bonds with the wood fibres and sets hard. And because the grain of each veneer runs perpendicular to the next, the weakness is removed. It's this that makes plywood incredibly strong and incredibly light when compared to natural wood. It's plywood's strength, flexibility and mouldability that's allowed it to have such a big impact on the world. And nothing encapsulates that more than this.
Enemy coast coming up.
When it entered service during the Second World War, the Mosquito was the fastest aircraft in the world. And the secret to its success was that it was made almost entirely of plywood. By using plywood, the precisely shaped aerodynamic wing could be made in one single piece. What's more, the plywood's stressed skin gave the wing enormous strength, reducing the need for heavy internal bracing and making it incredibly light. The fuselage was moulded in 2 halves, and the whole thing was then assembled and glued together like a model aircraft. The result was an airplane that was cheap and easy to produce, but with a top speed of over 400 miles per hour. And all because of the remarkable properties of plywood. Materials have transformed the way we live, extending our day and saving us time. They've changed the spaces we choose to live in, allowing us to construct homes in bigger, higher and brighter buildings. Adapted old stuff and brand new stuff gives designers and makers a huge array of materials from which to produce the modern world. But there's one material that defines our age like no other. It's versatile, strong and scalable. It can be any colour, shape or texture, and can be produced to display a dazzling variety of properties. It's the rubber in foam rubber and the glue in plywood. It's an everyday miracle in its own right and has spawned countless more everyday miracles. It has many different formulations, but we know it simply as plastic. Since the 1930s, plastic has become utterly ubiquitous. This factory alone uses over 25,000 tons of the stuff every year and produces over 10 million toy parts every day. The only way these toys can be made in such enormous quantities is by using injection moulding machines like these. This is a mould from a machine. You can see it comes in two halves and they fit together and create a cavity on the inside. And in this case, it looks like that produces a castle. I can show you how it works over here because it's a smaller one. You can really get into the detail. So it's quite an intricate mechanism. It's a bit like a lock. Here inside is one half of the mould, and as it's closed together, you can see that bits of the mould fall into place. And as this comes across here and in, there's a cavity created here. And then you get cooling water in here, hot plastic in here, and then at the end of that process, out it comes, the piece is made. So it's there, and then some pins jut forward and they push out the part, and there you have a fine bit of injection moulding. And this thing, you may be wondering what it is a ghost. Not a ghost in the machine, but a ghost out of the machine. Because you can melt and re-solidify plastics like these, they're massively scalable. Any size, any shape, it's not a problem. Look, baby seals! Tiny little baby seals. This is, I think it's a baby T-Rex's arm. And this is a monkey tail. So you can make anything, any size, any shape, any colour. You want it, they can make it. Plastic is the ultimate manufacturing material. You can make it into any shape you like. A toy, a pen, a computer keyboard, a car bumper, or a boat. Tough and durable, or soft and bendy. From airliners to cling film. It's a designer's dream. I mean, look at this thing. It's so intricate. It's got hair, several different materials all made in the same machine at once with moving parts. It's sort of an incredible miracle of modern engineering. And here it is, being produced at the rate of 3.2 per second. I mean, that's a lot better than the human race is doing. We're doing 2.6 children per second. In the last 100 years, plastics have come to dominate the material world. It seems there really is a plastic for everything. They're so common, in fact, it's easy to forget that we're often even clothed in plastics. In the 1940s, a group of plastic fibres was introduced that would change the world of fashion forever. I'm going to attempt to make some plastic fibre out of these two chemicals. Now, one is a supercool chloride solution and the other one is a diaminohexane solution. But in a minute you'll see that they react together. And I'm pouring it very carefully because actually one is oil-based and is floating on the top, and the other one is water-based and is sunk to the bottom. The key thing about these particular chemicals is that the small molecules of each liquid are capable of bonding together with the molecules of the other to form larger molecules, long chains, called polymers. And that's exactly what happens where they meet. A chemical reaction takes place, creating a delicate film, the polymer, between the two liquids. If I then remove the film with a pair of tweezers, a fresh boundary is created and the reaction continues. And I get huge long chains of plastic. And as long as I keep pulling, so this will continue. And if I attach this to this mandrel and rotate, I get filament. I get as much as I want. I just keep rotating this. And as long as there are 2 liquids in this beaker, I get more and more of this plastic filament. And this was one of the most influential plastics in the 20th century. And it's called, of course, nylon. Nylon was developed by Wallace Carruthers at DuPont in the late 1930s. It was one of the first fully synthetic fibres. And one of the first uses for this new plastic fabric was a product which quickly became known as nylons. In the early decades of the 20th century, the hemlines of fashionable ladies' dresses began to rise. Slowly, more and more leg was being revealed. What was needed was a cheap, sleek and sheer garment to cover the exposed skin. Nylon was quickly pressed into service. Here I've got a little box of some of the original nylon tights. These are from 1948. But there we are, look at that. This is an antique, but a beautiful one. And look, you can see the shaped leg, the seam down the back. These were the must-have item of the time. People rioted in the streets if the stocks ran low of this product. Woven into stockings, nylon turned a luxury item into something actually much better than their expensive silk predecessors. Nylons were durable, easy to wash, and had an attractive appearance. They were so good, in fact, that during World War II, when stock was scarce, women were reportedly prepared to fight just to get their hands on them. But things have actually changed a lot since then. They're not made of pure nylon anymore. In fact, if you take a pair of modern tights and have a look at them, what you get is actually something that's far more sophisticated. It has a lot of give in it for a start, and that's because there's a new material in there, not just nylon, but elastane. Here's some nylon, and this is a great, nice, stiff, strong fibre, good durability, but it doesn't have much give, and actually it'll just snap if you pull it too hard. And over here is a roll of elastane, or you might know it as lycra, and this is very stretchy stuff. Look at that. Wow, wow, wow. And so you can stretch it quite a long way before it breaks. So the thing is, you've got these two things. One gives you a very nice feel next to the skin, and it's very sheer, and the other one gives you this flexibility. It will conform to any shape you are, any shape you want it to be. And how do you combine them together? Well, you can either weave them together, or you can actually combine them in a single fibre. Look at this. So this has got an elastane core, nylon wrapped around it. This factory in Derbyshire produces more than 700,000 pairs of tights every week. Each is woven and stitched together by an array of balletic robotic machines. And because of elastane, each of the 120 different designs will be a perfect fit. Something appreciated by the women who work here. So what would life be like without tights?
Very boring.
You can dress an outfit up, so the essentials. Yeah.
Something to keep you warm, makes it nice little bit to set your outfit up, you know. Make you look sexy, make your legs look long. Make you feel sexy as well. Yeah, make you feel sexy.
So life will be less sexy, less interesting, and a bit cold.
If you haven't got time to shave, they're a good cover up.
Synthetic fibres like nylon and elastane epitomise our mastery of materials. Our ability to invent and engineer new materials specific to our needs, and use them to manufacture products that are affordable to the greatest number of people. Our homes, what we put into them and how we use them, have been revolutionised by our ability to make new materials. Yet despite the material diversity of our homes, all new materials share some fundamental similarities. They make our lives more secure, more comfortable, and more enjoyable.
For centuries, comfort and convenience was the preserve of the rich, and that's because the objects that made up a home were handmade. That was time-consuming and expensive. And now we all live like kings and queens because we created materials that can be mass-produced, and that's allowed everybody to have a bit of comfort and luxury in their homes. You would like to explore some of the everyday miracles of engineering and materials? Have a look at the free learning activities on the Open University website.
Go to bbc.co.uk/everydaymiracles and follow the links to the Open University.